What up, people? The first half of 2024 is over and so many amazing games have already been released. And if you're an RPG fan specifically like I am, whether it's turn-based strategy or action, you've had plenty of games to buy, play, or add to your backlog. And because there's already been so many incredible RPG titles to choose from, I wanted to take the time to highlight some of the best that have been released these past 6 months. Also, if you're new to the channel, I make videos of single player games with a heavy focus on RPGs. If that's something that interests you and you've been enjoying the video, consider subscribing or just hitting the like button to help with the algorithm. And with all that out of the way, here are the top 10 RPGs released in the first half of 2024. Starting off the list, we have Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. This flashy action RPG was released in February and was developed and published by Cygames. When it comes to combat, you have your basic melee attacks, which can be used to pull off various combos, and dodging, which if used at the last second before being attacked, will grant you a few seconds of invincibility. You have skills you can use by holding the skill button and choosing one of your 4 skills, each tied to a specific button. These skills can be used for various things such as attacks, buffs, healing, etc. There's also link attacks, which are full party attacks that can be used once an enemy stun gauge has filled, and on top of that there's also a mechanic called link time, which is triggered when the link levels are at 100% and each party member performs a link attack. During link time, any move becomes slower and you as the player are granted various effects like increased attack, health regen, and even shorter cooldowns. Each character has a powerful super move called a Skybound art that can be used once their SBA gauge is filled, and if all the characters successfully perform the Skybound arts, a chain burst will occur which will deal even more damage. A common criticism of the game is while the combat is fun, it can get kind of repetitive after a while, and after playing the demo, I can definitely see how that could be the case. But if you're only playing it for the 15-hour-ish single player campaign, it probably won't bother you too much. While it probably won't be accused of being innovative, Grand Blue Fantasy Relink is a gorgeous and extremely flashy action RPG that's perfect for people who want something a little more simple or just getting into the genre. And if you could wait for a sale, I definitely think it's worth your time. Next on the list, we have Dragon's Dogma 2. This action RPG was released in March and was developed and published by Capcom. In the game, you'll take on the role of a character called the Arisen, a hero marked by a dragon whom they must defeat. Like many open world RPGs, a lot of your time will be spent exploring, taking on quests, and fighting monsters, while also being caught up in a geopolitical conflict between two kingdoms. To assist in this, the Arisen rely on allies called pawns, who are NPCs who join your party. These characters are AI controlled but function like player controlled avatars and are able to assist in fights, provide information on enemies, and give guidance to active quests. Not only can you create and customize your own pawn character, you can also recruit 2 additional pawns that have been created by other players. Both the Arisen and pawns each operate under a vocation, which is a class that defines what abilities and equipment they can use in combat with different strengths and weaknesses. Vocations are split between basic, advanced, and hybrid, the latter only being accessible to the Arisen. The game has been praised by fans for its combat and exploration, while a lot of the criticism is about the quality of the story and the way the game runs on PC. So maybe buy the game on console if you have the option. While the main campaign will only take you around 40 hours to get through, many people who have really gotten into the game have spent hundreds of hours playing, most likely coming from side quests and just overall exploration. While it certainly won't be for everyone, Dragon's Dogma 2 is one of those games where if it is your type of RPG, you're going to get a lot of hours of enjoyment and it'll probably be a contender for your personal game of the year. Next at number 8, we have Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes. This turn-based JRPG was developed by Rabbit and Bear Studios and published by 505 Games. For those who don't know, this game was meant to be a spiritual successor to the Suikoden franchise, and just by looking, it's easy to see that. Like I mentioned earlier, this game is turn-based and you can have up to 6 units on the field at once. There will be 3 in the front and 3 in the back, and depending on where the individual characters are positioned, will determine who they'll be able to attack. While I'm no expert when it comes to strategy, I feel it makes the most sense to keep the stronger attackers up front and leave the back row for healers, mages, and characters with lower defense, as they're a little harder to reach. Different characters also have different ranges, so you have to consider that when figuring out where to place your units, otherwise they might not be able to attack anyone. Spells and abilities are utilized through runes, which are placed in individual characters' lenses, and that's what allows them to use different moves. The category, rarity, and even number of runes that can be set depends on the hero's own lens. Some lenses have a dedicated rune that cannot be removed, while others can only attach runes from a certain category. There's also hero combos, which are super moves that can be used with characters who have strengthened their bond to a certain degree. You'll probably have a lot of fun trying to unlock them all. Other than the art style, which I love, one of my favorite aspects of the game is the amount of characters you can recruit. It almost feels like you're collecting Pokemon or something. So far I've only run into a couple of units that feel like carbon copies of someone else, but even then it doesn't really bother me that much. Some characters stand out more than others personality-wise, so everyone's going to have their favorites. For example, my favorite right now is a healer who hits enemies with their staff and tells them to suck it. Now, some people online find this character annoying. I personally think all those people are insane, and also, how dare they? The music in the game is also phenomenal. This game might have one of the best battle themes I've heard in a JRPG in a long time. Look it up when you get a chance. My only real complaint is that so far it seems like every boss battle is going to have some sort of gimmick, and that might get annoying after a while, but we'll see. When it comes to combat, music, and visuals, this game has no business being as good as it is for what is essentially an indie game. So if you're looking for a turn-based JRPG to dump 40 to 60 plus hours into, Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes might be the perfect choice. Next on the list we have Stellar Blade. This action-adventure RPG was developed by Korean studio Shift Up and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment. The biggest draw of this game, well, the second biggest draw, is the combat, which focuses on figuring out the attack patterns of enemies and countering with precise timing. Eve, the main character's beta gauge, is filled by parrying and invading in combat. The beta gauge is spent to use skills such as piercing super armor and enemy combo interruption. Eve also has a burst gauge filled through successful parries and combos, which can be used to activate buffs and powerful attacks. The game utilizes the PlayStation 5's DualSense controller's haptic feedback to deliver feedback on enemy attacks and weapon accuracy. Exploration features wall scaling and swinging on ropes for environmental traversal, with things to be found including extra costumes. While the combat felt kind of stiff and clunky to me, I very well might be in the minority because the combat in Stellar Blade is what people compliment the most. Well, the second thing they compliment the most. Speaking of that, if you're one of the few people who know nothing about this game, including the controversy surrounding it, do yourself a favor and try to avoid it and just look up some reviews. Keep in mind that as of right now, this is a PS5 exclusive, but it'll probably come to PC in the next year or so I wouldn't run out to get a PS5 just for this. While it probably won't blow you away with its narrative, if you're looking for a game similar to Nioh that really prioritizes tight combat and challenging fights, give Stellar Blade a shot. And don't be weird about it. Just missing out on a top 5 spot is Unicorn Overlord. This tactical RPG was developed by Vanillaware and published by Atlus in March. Combat is split between movement of troops across large battlefields and combat when two units meet. All combat takes place in real time, but you can pause and change your strategy and check on your units. Parties are made up to 5 characters within a side character class. During the early game, units are limited to 2 characters, but more character slots can be unlocked using a currency called honors. Battlefield settings include open field areas and urban environments such as towns and cities, which alter gameplay. Some battles have gimmicks for players to exploit, such as a fire within the environment or siege weapons that can be controlled by either the player or the enemy side. Units are arranged in a grid with their positions influencing their abilities and combat efficiency. Some characters' classes are designed for short or long range exclusively, while others have a more varied attack range or a different set of skills. Battles play out automatically based on characters' attributes and player set behaviors. Battles last until either one is defeated or both sides run out of points used to perform actions which stuns the defeated unit for a time. The number of units that can be employed during combat sections depends on a resource called Valor, which can be earned by completing battles. During the campaign, new characters either join as part of a storyline or can be recruited. Some possible recruits are former enemies, with the player's choice to either spare or kill them, impacting future story events. Funny enough, I was actually really excited for this game until playing the demo. After playing the demo, I realized I personally prefer turn-based strategy games like a Fire Emblem, Triangle Strategy, or a Midnight Suns as opposed to real-time strategy like Unicorn Overlord. Now, that is in no way a criticism of the game, it just wasn't my personal cup of tea. But if you are a fan of real-time strategy games, Unicorn Overlord is an amazing entry into the genre with a beautiful art style to go along with it. Sticking with Atlus, starting off the top 5, we have what I believe is the most recent game on this list, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance. This turn-based RPG was released on June 13th and is the new definitive version of SMT5 that was released in 2021. If you're not familiar with this Atlus franchise, I've said in many videos already that SMT is pretty much Pokemon with some added Dark Souls difficulty on the side. While there are multiple difficulty settings if you want an easier time or just to enjoy the story, just know that hard mode really means hard mode. Outside of updated graphics coming from being multi-platform, some of the many other additions to Vengeance include 40 new demons, a boss rush challenge mode, previous DLC, a new story route, and many quality of life improvements. However, as far as core gameplay goes, everything is pretty much the same. You recruit demons to fight alongside you and try to exploit weaknesses to make battles go a lot smoother. Just like Persona, fusing demons to get stronger demons is essential, especially if playing on higher difficulties. One of the coolest game mechanics in my opinion that came to Vengeance are the upgraded Makasui skills. These new skills can only be used by multiple demons, and they have to be specific demons in order to get certain moves. In one of the showcases, it showed super moves from various demon groups such as angels, beasts, pixies, and also the popular Jack Frost demons. There's also a new mechanic called innate skills, which every demon will have. It'll activate automatically, and some of the skills pair well with the Makasui moves I just mentioned. The game has seen stellar reviews across all platforms, with it being praised for its combat, updated graphics and frame rate, party customization, and character development in regards to the new story route. If you've already played and beat the original, it's kind of hard to recommend this, especially at full price, but if you haven't played it, didn't finish it, or you're looking for a turn-based game that prides itself on difficulty, Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance has got you covered. Still sticking with Atlas, just outside the top 3 we have Persona 3 Reload. This RPG was released in February and is a remake of Persona 3, which was released in 2006 and was also the 4th main installment of the Persona series. Other than the modern graphics, there were a lot of added features to this remake in regards to social links and also combat. Similar to Shin Megami Tensei, Persona games involve you fighting and or recruiting personas during turn-based combat. However, unlike SMT games, Persona games are a lot more forgiving in the difficulty department. One of the new additions when it comes to combat is what's known as Shift, which is similar to Baton Pass for Persona 5, which involves the ability to switch between characters after hitting an enemy's weak point. Another cool mechanic is Theurgy, which is a super move that can be utilized after filling up a player's gauge through Persona abilities and basic melee attacks. The speed of gauges filling up varies among characters based on different conditions being met, such as critical hits or using support skills. Also, not only can the move not be dodged, but it also ignores the resistances of the personas, so make sure you use it when you need to turn the tide in a big fight. I'm a huge fan of Persona 5, and while not on that level, at least for me, Persona 3 Reload clicked with me just like Persona 5 did. The combat is still really good, the side stories with people around town are compelling, and so far the overall story might be even better than that of Persona 5. If SMT 5 sounds a little too hard for you, but you still want to recruit monsters for some turn-based combat, Persona 3 Reload is the perfect alternative. Staying on remakes for a little longer, kicking off the top 3 we have Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. This RPG was released in May and like I just mentioned is the remake to the original game that was released in 2004 on the GameCube. The remake features redone graphics, animation, and music along with quality of life changes and some new features exclusive to the Switch version. These include an updated fast travel system, increased item and coin capacity, the ability to toggle the original GameCube soundtrack using a badge, a gallery for viewing art and music, and 2 additional secret bosses. Just like the original, combat in the Thousand Year Door follows a turn-based battle system. When Mario comes in contact with an enemy in the overworld, the game transitions to a battle screen taking place on a stage. Jumping or hammering an enemy before entering combat mode will cause a first strike. This allows Mario to damage the enemy before the regular combat starts. Likewise, some enemies can strike first to damage Mario before the regular combat starts as well. The player controls both Mario and his currently selected partner and chooses actions for each of them, which include attacking an enemy, using an item, or swapping a partner with another. Attacking and defending can be enhanced by executing timed button presses. Also during battle, a spectating audience reacts to how well you perform. If you perform well, the audience's cheers will replenish star power. If you perform spectacularly, they may throw items to the player such as a mushroom. Conversely, the audience may throw damage-causing objects at you or leave if you perform poorly during a battle. The audience starts with a maximum of 50 and can grow up to 200 as you level up during the game. Similar to Luigi's Mansion and Metroid, I've been wanting to get into this franchise ever since I bought my Switch, but didn't know where to start. I was going to start with Origami King, but I heard mixed reviews on it, so I decided otherwise. I also kept hearing that The Thousand Year Door is far and away the best Paper Mario game, so just like Wind Waker, I decided to wait for a report, and I'm glad I did. Also, one of my favorite RPGs of last year was Sea of Stars, which got a lot of inspiration from Chrono Trigger, but also from the Mario RPGs, so it's nice to finally get to play one of the games that was such an influence. Most people have nothing but praise for this remake, but the only criticism I've seen being about the frame rate of the game, so you have to make up your own mind if that's something you care about. I can make an argument that the art style alone is worth getting Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door, but if you're like me and missed out on this massively popular turn-based RPG when it came out on the GameCube, pick this remake up so you don't make that same mistake again.
You just woke up on the beach out of nowhere. Balls swaying in the breeze.
Oh shit! Oh, no freaking way! What the hell's going on?
Just missing out on the top spot, we have Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. This RPG is the 9th mainline entry of the Like a Dragon series, serving as a direct sequel to Yakuza Like a Dragon, released in 2020, and as a spin-off of Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name. In the game, players take control of Ichiban Kasuga and Kazuma Kiryu and their respective party members as they explore Japan and most notably Hawaii. Just like the previous game, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is sticking with the turn-based combat. The game allows players to select up to 4 characters in their party to fight a wider variety of enemies. The combat system also receives a major improvement compared to the previous entry. Every playable character now possesses a ring designating their area of movement and are now able to move freely during combat. The positioning of characters now heavily determines the flow of combat. For example, moving closer to an object, having another party member within the ring of another playable character, or positioning close or behind an enemy allows party members to do various attacks that deal extra damage. Set attacks can also affect the enemy depending on their current position, such as knockback to walls or objects, or even knocking other enemies in combat. Several minigames from previous entries return, such as karaoke, darts, mahjong, and arcade games including Virtua Fighter 3TB, Sega Base Fishing, and Spike Out. In addition, new minigames are introduced in Infinite Wealth, such as Crazy Delivery, a food delivery game inspired by Sega's Crazy Taxi franchise, Sujimon Battle, a Pokemon parody game, and Mismatch, a dating app for Ichiban. With this being a direct sequel, it is very much recommended you play the first Like a Dragon game. However, this game is also meant to be a send-off for Kiryu, and because of that, a lot of fans recommend you play the older Yakuza games in order to understand his full story as well. Now, as someone who's just getting into the Trail series, I realize the idea of playing 8+ games just to get to this one might sound like hell to a lot of you. So, to keep it simple, if you're someone who really cares about stories and character development, it'll probably be worth playing the older games before getting to this. Or if you couldn't care less about story, you could just jump into Infinite Wealth. But at the very least, you should probably play the first Yakuza Like a Dragon. Now, whether you decide to play the older titles or just start with this one, if there's one thing fans of Infinite Wealth and Yakuza games in general can all agree on, is that you're guaranteed to enjoy yourself. And at number 1, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This action RPG was developed and published by Square Enix and is a sequel to 2020's Final Fantasy VII Remake and the second in a planned trilogy of games remaking the PlayStation original Final Fantasy VII. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible because I can honestly talk about this game for hours based off how much I loved it, but I'll spare you. The way Rebirth took what made Final Fantasy VII Remake so good, improved on that, and made it an open world game is really impressive. The combat was already good, but just simple additions like Cloud being able to attack flying enemies or the new synergy abilities just make it that much better. Also, with there now being 7, technically 9 playable characters, it'll be really easy to find characters that fit your personal playstyle. You like fast-paced combat, use Yuffie, Cloud, or Tifa. Prefer using magic, use Aerith. There's someone for everyone. By the way, Aerith with Arcane Ward plus the Magnified Materia is borderline busted. But I digress. Moving over to the story, not only is it just as good as Final Fantasy VII Remake, for me it's even better. While we already knew about Red from the first game, being able to learn more about him while also getting so many great moments for Barret, Tifa, Cloud, and especially Aerith, you feel like you really know these characters and it makes the events that happen in the story that much more impactful. And while the main story and fights are good, where this game really shines is its side content. Whether it's playing Queen's Blood, minigames, fighting summons, or just doing the regular side mission, this game provides so much extra content to choose from and very little of it feels like a waste of time. Everything feels like it's worth it afterwards, whether the war was some weapon, a strong card, or just a good character moment that you wouldn't have gotten otherwise. The fact they packed all this into a $70 game is beyond impressive, and I can honestly say it's worth every penny. And I don't say that about a lot of games, $70 or not. And even though it's a sequel, I still think it might be worth getting a PS5 for alone. Really, the only problem I had with the game was a couple of regions were hard to navigate around, and it was frustrating trying to figure out how to get to certain places. But that could just be a me thing. After finishing my almost 120-hour playthrough, I can honestly say that not only is this my current game of the year for 2024, but other than The Witcher 3 and maybe The Last of Us, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is easily my favorite game of all time. Between the satisfying and addicting combat, well-written story and characters, exceptional soundtrack, and all the quality side content provided, there's really not much to dislike about this game, at least not for me. And while playing the original game plus the first part of the trilogy might feel like a lot of work just to get to this game, in my humble opinion, it's 100% worth it. Okay, but now I'm really interested to hear from you guys. What are some of your favorite RPGs so far this year? How many have you played off of this list? Are any of them your game of the year so far? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see more RPG content from me, click one of the links on the screen. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with the channel. Later.